Okay, everybody, so we're here for just a quick Q&A with the production team for the disclosure documentary. There's been some questions that have been arriving on our social media platform and through email and just in conversations with friends and family. So we thought maybe we'd put together just a little Zoom chat here with Joseph Smith out in England, me, Ben Watson here in the US, and we've been working on this project together up to this point. And yeah, this is an opportunity for us to address some of those questions. So I know, Joseph, you've got a few of those questions on hand, so let's see what we can do to answer them.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I mean, I guess just while we're introducing it, I guess obviously the reason we're doing this is because we care about answering the questions, and it's an investigative project. And so if anyone does have any other questions, we'd like don't second guess reaching out. Like, we definitely want to know what people are thinking. So there's going to be all the established channels. Feel free to drop us questions under this video or elsewhere. And if we end up doing another one of these, I mean, we'd love to do that. But if so if you do have other questions, definitely let us know. So yeah, I mean, I guess and first question really is, why do we think disclosure is going to happen?
Well, that's a good question, because that is the question of the century, in my opinion. I think the topic of disclosure, of course, in the UFO context, is the disclosure of the reality of the phenomenon of UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, as being not of origin on this earth. And so when we talk about disclosure, a lot of people think of like an official government announcement that ETs are real, that UFOs are a technology that existed outside of this planet, and somehow we became privy to it through either UFO crashes or whatever. But disclosure really surrounds the topic of UFOs and the reality of UFOs. And so what we're doing is taking this to the next step of, well, what are the theological implications of disclosure? But let me rewind to your question, Joseph, which is, why do we think disclosure is going to happen? Well, back in 2021, I think it was, that's when the US Senate had this report, this UFO report, that was presented to them that was specifically about UFOs and what the government knows about it. It was supposed to be this grand disclosure report. And there was some information, some interesting information that came from that, but it still left a lot of questions. Like, I'm just looking on the screen in front of me here. I won't share it right now, but I'm just reading on my other screen. This is from US News from June 2021. It says, US releases UFO report. Congress criticizes inconclusive findings. A hotly anticipated report that delved into sightings of UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, as the military calls them, appears to have yielded more questions than answers. And then there's just been article after article since then. This one by the New Yorker, how the Pentagon started taking UFOs seriously. The Guardian, something's coming. Is America finally ready to take UFOs seriously? From CNN, US intelligence community releases long-awaited UFO report. Here's just a couple more. NBC News, Pentagon's UFO footage and Obama's curiosity ratchet up expectations for a big reveal, or in other words, disclosure. And here's just one more, just a few months ago, from the New York Post. NASA hires 24 theologians to study human reaction to aliens. Then just yesterday, I mean, this is all so current, just yesterday, the Daily Mail, and there's been all sorts of news organizations around the world reporting on this one. It says, UFO sightings have left witnesses with radiation burns, brain damage, and perceived time suspension, according to interviews in newly released Pentagon report. So we have the Pentagon report that was like a little bit of disclosure in 2021. Then all of a sudden yesterday, we have this bombshell report, which is another element of disclosure. It's like this, we're experiencing this trickle disclosure. So when you say, why do we think disclosure is going to happen? Well, it is kind of happening already. And that's what we're seeing. It's happening step by step by step, as if we're being, it's like the pump is being primed for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess while as much as we have been drip fed, I suppose the disclosure itself is referring to an event that's probably going to happen soon, that's much more official, much more kind of tangible, and a much more kind of, like official disclosure or declaration, and not so much these drips. Because I think at the moment it's like people that,
Mhm.
have done their research can basically all agree that there's no smoke without fire, and that there's either, if we're wrong, there's just there's someone's clearly trying to come up with evidence. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff that is going on, but this is all based on the implication that one day it's going to be set in stone. We're going to be shown like completely undeniable proof, like video footage, or like have an actual extraterrestrial come and visit us, and it will be like like September 1969 kind of tear coverage and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like when I talked with Nick Pope, which is, if people look at the teaser reel for this at our website, disclosuredocumentary.com, Nick Pope in our interview, and he was the UFO guy, the X-Files guy for the UK Ministry of Defense. When he refers to disclosure, there's kind of two kinds of disclosure. There's the one with a little d, and then there's disclosure with a capital D. And it's the disclosure with a capital D that we're really focused on here.
Yeah. All right, well, nice. Well, hey, thanks, Ben. Okay, so the next question is, we've kind of already touched on this, but what have the experts already said? So I guess, we've kind of established that there are experts, there are people that have read the files, that have the information, they work in, reputable government organizations or scientific organizations, and they're basically in agreement that there's stuff there, and they, from basically anyone that could have a finger in the pie does and has said something about it, basically. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. And that's one of the things that's most compelling to me on the topic of disclosure is the people that are being very public and vocal about this. More and more of them are at the highest levels of government for their respective countries. We're talking senators. We're talking like the former Minister of Defense for Israel, former Minister of Defense for Canada. We're talking about other members of Congress, former governors, and of course, pilots who are highly trained, highly scientific, and highly reputable people. So lots and lots of folks are talking about it, and that's one of the big things that attracted my attention to this topic of disclosure is the caliber of people that are being very public about this. So it causes me to pay attention.
Nice. Yes, thanks, Ben. So yeah, the next question is, what are the religious implications? And I guess, why are we worried about the religious implications?
Yeah, so then that's really the heart of this project is, because there are lots of documentaries out there and other resources talking about the topic of disclosure. But what we're doing with this documentary is taking it a step further to discuss, well, what are the theological implications of disclosure? And for me, this is a very personal project because it really reflects kind of the inner turmoil that I've experienced as I've pondered this topic. And because I'm a spiritual person and I believe in God and I believe in the scriptural narrative as found in the Bible. So all of a sudden now I have to consider the reality of other races, other entities outside of planet Earth that might not even look like me, that aren't created in the image of God, for example. And here we are already getting into theological implications right there, that phrase, made in the image of God. So I started personally I started struggling with some of these questions, and it kind of took me down a rabbit hole. And I started to get paralyzed with these questions, these theological questions. Are we talking UFOs as being something that's demonic? Are we talking about these beings being children of God, but a different type of child? I mean, are they another species like, animals on our planet are another species. So what does it all mean? What are the answers? So instead of just being paralyzed with these questions, I decided I would start looking for answers. So I started seeking out authors and thought leaders on this, and spiritual leaders, and just anyone who's written about this topic. And there are people out there that have already put a lot of effort into this and a lot of work. And as I started to compile all of these resources, I thought, you know what would be great is just a documentary that just captures this topic, and let's expand it even more, and find some more voices that can speak to this, so that when people who are of faith are faced with the reality of disclosure, they will have a resource. They will have this documentary that they can go to, which doesn't necessarily give all the answers, but gives some possible answers, some really solid ideas to consider, to look at this from the biblical lens and see how it all fits within the biblical paradigm. That it is possible to have ETs and the truth of UAPs and UFOs, and have that all fit within the biblical paradigm. And it doesn't have to be a force fit either.
Yeah, and I think it's also important, I think what we're doing, that we're, like you said, there are other people that have explored this from a more kind of physical and scientific and maybe psychological standpoint. But touching on the philosophical side is going to be important, because ultimately we're dealing with belief systems and not technicalities, right? I think there's lots of technical implications that are important, and there's lots of scientists that have spoken and will speak to the technical implications. But ultimately, we're a species that feels things, and we're very belief driven, and I think it's important that we're trying to explore how it's going to affect us, not just how it's going to necessarily technologically change the world. So yeah, next question is what of the well, I'll combine these next two under there. So what have the major religions already said on the subject, and what have religious leaders already been saying? And generally, what are Christians and other religious people likely to think? Like, what sort of gut reactions have we seen or will see or are suspecting to see if the White House said aliens are here?
Right. Well, just to dovetail in this question with the one that you just had, I was going to also add one thing, that it's estimated that when disclosure happens, that at a minimum 30% of Christians will simply walk away from their faith being completely disillusioned by this disclosure event. And that to me is very unfortunate. And I hope that this project can help rescue and protect their faith. And to answer your question, what have some of the churches and religions and other spiritual leaders said about this? Well, we have anecdotal evidence that it is being talked about in certain churches at high levels and others at congregational levels. I mean, we know that the Vatican has talked a little bit about this. We know that it definitely is being talked about at the congregational level with many churches, if that particular pastor or whoever is in charge of that congregation has a personal interest in this topic. So it's scattered at best. And this is one of the big questions that we want to explore with this documentary. Well, what is it that's already being done to prepare the flock, so to say, for this disclosure event? Regardless of what denomination, this applies to anyone who believes in God, who believes that we are children of God, that we are the family of God. We're all in this together. And this documentary wants to explore, well, what are the congregations of the world being taught? Or are they being taught at all? Are they being prepared at all? And if they are being prepared, then what is being taught to them? That might be helpful for others to know.
Yeah, no, totally. Because I think ultimately, it is a preparatory tool. So I guess that leads us quite nicely into, obviously, if it's not, I don't know if we've established it properly, but the documentary is definitely, it's an investigative process while we're making it, right? So I think it's not like, so I don't think either of us are claiming to know what the answers are, or neither of us, as of today, we don't know what, the message is, right? But it is investigative in nature. So I guess, what are you hoping to find out as we produce the documentary, and what are we hoping to learn?
Well, because I think that this is one of the most important subjects that we can be covering in a documentary, I certainly don't want to cut corners on finding what we need to find. So we're prepared to go to any place on earth that we need to go to find answers to these questions. That means going to the Middle East, if that means going to Africa, if that means going to somewhere in Europe, if that means going to, well, you get the idea. Like we are prepared to go where we need to go to uncover the answers that we need to uncover, and to find the people that we need to find to speak to this topic, because this is a global topic. It applies to the entire family of God. And so we want to explore it. We don't want to just make it, a US centric thing. We want to do our due diligence to explore. So yes, it has a big investigative component to it. We don't know yet all of the people that we want to interview, but we do have a list that we've curated already and reached out to and had good responses so far from very reputable people. We already have some interviews in the can already. So it's looking very good as far as our ability to get answers from people and to find the right people.
Yes, and I mean, I guess just to add on to that, I think if you're a sort of, for all intents and purposes, a lay person that doesn't know who you'd even want to get answers from, I think I can definitely say that anyone whose opinion you'd want to know about it are people that we're trying to get, if that makes sense. So, all of the people who have given the serious thought, like the name brand people, people that are going to give, good balance and stuff, this is it's going to be a high quality resource as well, I think. And I think that's important to establish because, again, if you're, listening to this, you're probably, there's a really good chance that you're not in the kind of UFO inner circles. But if you are, you'll know that the people that we are naming are the ones who you'd be wanting to hear from.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's not just theologians. I mean, yeah, so we'll have the theologians, we'll have the spiritual thought leaders, we'll have others that are respected, but we'll also have people from high levels of government that can speak to this from a government perspective and a disclosure perspective. And we'll also have well-established and well-respected ufologists who will be very recognizable to the audience, who have made appearances in other UFO documentaries. So yes, whether it's the theological experts or the government experts or the UFO experts, we'll touch them all.
Yes. Okay. So that leads nicely into, from a more technical perspective, what are the documentary goals in as much as where's this going? Who's going to see it? Where will people be able to watch it? How long is it going to be? When's it going to be available? Like that kind of thing. So what do we know so far about that kind of side of things?
Yeah, so the intent is for this documentary to be a resource that can be accessible very easily through various online streaming sites. So we will distribute this online. It'll be very easy to access anywhere on planet Earth, pretty much. It'll be
or off Earth.
What's that?
Or off Earth.
Yes, or off Earth. Yeah, and it'll be a full-length documentary. We're going to make sure that, again, we don't cut corners. We want to give it as much attention and time as we need to. So if that's 60 minutes, it's 60 minutes. If it's 90 minutes, it's 90 minutes. If it's 2 hours, it's going to be 2 hours. But whatever it is, it's going to be, every minute is going to be well worth it.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I think it's going to be, like I said, we're definitely trying to get a lot of good content into the runtime, right? It's not going to be, it's going to be fast paced. Like it's going to be good. I think it'll be an entertaining watch as well. Like this isn't just going to be, a talk show. It's going to be a good product. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the end of my question list, Ben. I mean, anything else you kind of want to go over? I mean, obviously, I want to, just while we're here, we'll do a plug. If anyone's got any contacts for people, because obviously a lot of people watching this are going to be in those sort of UFO inner circles or other emotionally invested people. And I think you'll know people, or you could be someone that we'd want to talk to. So, if you're someone that we would want to talk to, or someone that knows someone that we would want to talk to, definitely reach out. Do you know what I mean? We've already got some good contacts, but obviously, we want to make this as good as we can. And, we're always looking for triangulation and balance. And, the worst thing that can happen is we have a Zoom chat that doesn't go anywhere, right? So definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, for sure. And we have the ability to go after any interview anywhere on planet Earth. So we welcome any recommendations that you might have. We have already, like I say, a great list of I would call them A-listers for the interviews, some of which we've already conducted, and we would welcome the opportunity to meet with more people. The more information, the better.
Yeah, totally. And I guess, that reminds me, it's the ball is already rolling. So for people wondering, where are we in the process of this? I would say we are towards the end of pre-production, in as much as we know where we're going with this. We know what we're doing. We've already got some of it lined up. We're very much in the meat of the project. So, we're like Ben said, we've already got some interviews in the can. We just need to get more interviews and more footage and, B-roll and other supplementary footage, and then edit it together. So, it's very much a living, breathing project. This isn't, it's not just something on a dream board. We've already got some of the interviews actually physically filmed, and it is deep into the process of being made.
Right. And one of the big reasons why we wanted to do this Q&A right now is this is a living project, like Joseph just said. So it's a nimble project. We are willing to take it this direction and that direction as we need to, as things develop. And some of that will be guided by the input we get from you, the audience. And so we wanted to get you on board for this. This is probably the first of multiple updates that we'll present along the way, so that the audience can be a part of the curation and the creation of this project.
Yeah, totally. And again, I guess just before we totally wrap up, I'll just plug again. If you do have any sort of specific questions you'd like us to go over, definitely let us know. We're more than happy to touch on things again. And, I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult for us to do a live stream at some point if people want that. I guess just let us know. And yeah, that's, yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, let's keep it going. We're going to give you updates along the way, but this is going to be good. This is the year.
It's going to be good.
Okay. See you.
I think Christians should be perfectly capable of taking on board aliens.
We may be closer than ever to getting answers.
Are they essentially humans with souls, but just from a different planet? Are they something entirely different?
So these are some declassified documents from my old job at the UK Ministry of Defence.
The Bible teaches there is an entity, a non-human entity.
My main objective in visiting with Nick is just to come to an understanding as to what is disclosure.
Our main objective in filming this documentary is to explore some of the more philosophical questions that Christians are likely to have in the event of an official disclosure of extraterrestrial contact.